Today is Sunday, Ches Elul Tavshin Ayin Vav. We are in Teres Menachem, Sefer Mamorim Tavshin Yud Gimel, on page Ayin Ches in the Maimer Basi Lgani of Tavshin Yud Gimel.
Correct.
The Rebbe, of course, is explaining in this Maimer the third chapter, points in the third chapter of the Friedrich Rebbe's original Maimer Basi Lgani from Tavshin Yud from 1950. And the Rebbe basically brought what the Friedrich Rebbe brings in the first section of the Maimer, that the main Shechina, the main aspects of the Shechina was down here below, and then Adam Harishon, in time, in other words, when at creation, and when Adam Harishon was inserted, placed in Gan Eden, in paradise, to work it and to guard it, to do his Avodas Hashem in plan A before the sin, the main Shechina, the main aspect of the Shechina was down here below, and then through the sin of the tree of knowledge and the following sins, the Shechina was removed from the earth all the way to the seventh heaven, and then there were seven tzaddikim that brought it back down until Moshe Rabbeinu, who brought it back down to earth, from the seventh heaven from the first heaven down to the earth, from the first heaven down to the earth.
On the qualification, when we use the word Shechina in this context, because normally Shechina is we're talking about Malchus and Bacillus, no?
Correct. So if you look in the
how can that be?
You look in the first Maimer of Basi Lgani, the Rebbe's first Maimer of Basi Lgani, Tavshin Yud Aleph, which we learned in fact. Over there, the Rebbe explains that he brings from the Mittel Rebbe from others that Shechina is in every place. It's contextual. Shechina is contextual. So in Atzilus, it's Malchus Atzilus. Higher than Atzilus, it would be what corresponds to Malchus on that level, all the way back to Lifnei HaTzimtzum. So it's a reference to divine energy that's drawn down to come down below.
It's colloquial, in other words.
Yeah.
But when it says it brings
Normally,
it down here, what does it mean it brings it down?
So that's what he says over here. So now this is what he begins to explain over here. What does he say over there? That what do we accomplish now through Avodah? What did the tzaddikim accomplish and affect their generation to accomplish? To draw down the Shechina back down here below, to the way it was originally, or even more than originally, meaning to say a higher level and lower down, as it were. What does drawing down mean? To make it present, manifest and fused with our reality, so to speak. So in other words, without Avodas Hashem, Hashem is all over. Right? That's a given fact. The Eibishter is all over. The question is, how much of that presence is actually fused with the Gashmis of the world? Right? So Avodas Hashem, the basic is when you do a mitzvah, you take a physical object and you turn it into a holy object. So you're drawing down godliness. Of course, the main drawing down of godliness into the world is that the world should not appear as it does today, as a Gashmisdik, a separate, innate, independent, as a separate, independent existence of Hashem, but rather that it should express godliness. That's what we're accomplishing. We don't see it today. That will become revealed when Mashiach comes, but it's accomplished today. So that's what we're basically up to. So which level of godliness do we draw down? So the Rebbe says, it's as the Friedrich Rebbe said in his Maimer, the famous expression from the Zohar, Kadiskafia Sitra Achra, is that when the Sitra Achra, the other side of Kedusha, is bent, or what's the word? It's when the Skafia is sort of made submissive to Kedusha, right? So then you draw down the glory of Kuchabrichu B'chol Almin, the glory of Hashem in all worlds. What is he talking about? So over here, the Pirush, so on top of page Ayin Ches, the Pirushai, how does he define this phrase that you draw down the glory of Hashem in all worlds? It's not that you're drawing down the glory of, it's not, the meaning is not, as it would seem simply, that you draw down this glory in all the worlds, but rather the Pirushai, Ha'oir Shemer B'chol Almin B'Shava. B'chol Almin in all worlds is actually a definition of Yikar the Kuchabrichu. Which level of godliness which revelation of godliness, which light do we draw down? The light that shines, that illuminates all worlds equally. Right? Of course you draw down into all worlds, including our world down here below. But the way that Friedrich Rebbe defines it is, he defines it as the light that shines in all worlds equally. In other words, Sovev Kol, the godly energy that transcends worlds. How do we draw it down? The drawing down takes place, is accomplished through serving Hashem in the manner of bending the other side of Kedusha. Right? Shebahave, there's the Mikdash, because in these services that took place in the temple, in the Holy Temple, what is it? What would that correspond to?
Sorry, I've got to stop you, because normally it's kafia when you imply the presence still of some form of Ra.
Of course.
So why did he say hisapra?
Why? Well, first of all,
in other words, iskafia is so that implies that it's still there, but it's submissive, whereas soive implies permeating, which is above.
Well, he's talking about the process. How do we draw down Seviv? Through Aveda. Of course, Askafia ultimately leads to Ishapcha.
Okay.
In other Maimonim, he actually uses the phrase
Yeah.
Askafia Ishapcha.
Yeah.
He's just focusing on the expression of the Zohar, where the Zohar says Kat Iskafia Sitracha.
Right.
So when the Zohar says Kat Iskafia Sitracha, when the Sitracha is bent, right?
Yeah.
So over there, it's like a catch-all phrase for the submissiveness of the Sitracha to what? To Kedusha, right? But of course, over here, in the direct answer to your question is that he's talking directly about the process, the process that actually draws down godliness into the world. Now, which Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash, which service in the Beis Hamikdash corresponded to Iskafia and Ishapcha, right? Now we don't have the Beis Hamikdash physically, so it's all done benefesh Adam in our interaction with our soul, with the animal soul, and so on and so forth. What was that Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash? Sheba Aveda is the Mikdash, Aveda is a karbonis of befrat ma'isa akteres. In the services that took place in the temple in the Beis Hamikdash, this is a reference to the Aveda, the service of the sacrificial offerings, and particularly the Ketores, the incense, right? The Karbonis is the animal, right? So in the image of that in us is the animal soul. That would refer to the midos of the Nefesh Habahamis, right? The emotions of the animal soul. The Ketores is a reference to Machshava Dibur Maisa. It says Chassidus, thought, speech, and action, because it's less, it's more. How should I put it? It's
refined.
Or it's something that's a disconnect from the Kabbalah, so to speak. The Behemoth itself is the actual Korban. That's the midas of the Nefesh Habahamis. The Ketores is what? Is the Machshava Dibur Maisa, the thought, speech, and action. This is also the reason why the Mishkan, why the tabernacle in the desert was built from acacia wood. Specifically, why the word for acacia wood, acacia, is shittim. What is the root of that? It's similar to the word shtus, as you say, right? Or shita. Hine, shita or shota, pirushay netiya. The word shita or shota means netiya, turning away. It doesn't necessarily mean turning away to the negative. It just means turning away from the regular, normal path. V'chein pirush, the same thing, the word shtus, folly, also is what? The idea of turning away from the normal behavior. The hainu, in other words, sheyesh davar shu emtzoi, there's something which is the median, the middle road, so to speak. V'ha'atoya le'ezetzad, and turning away to either direction, l'mayla l'mata, above or below, nikras shita or shota is called turning away. The ha'atoya l'mayla hushtus tikdusha. Turning away above is holy folly. Turning away below is the opposite of holy folly. The way of Torah and mitzvahs in general is the middle way, is the path, the normal middle road. As the Rambam writes in his Laws of Ethics, where over there he speaks about the way a person should behave. He says a person should always take it shouldn't be extreme in either direction, but should take the middle road, and that's the way of Torah and mitzvahs. It's only in certain extraneous circumstances when a person has, for example, a bad habit, he has to turn all the way in the other direction in order to train himself and then turn back to the middle road when he's able to. So the middle road, as the Rambam says, is the normal. Is usually the norm. Is turning away above. Turning upwards from the middle road, Hushtus de Kedusha is holy, is folly of holiness. shetzarich li is gam shtus dikdusha, because there is a necessity for folliness of holy in certain circumstances. Particularly when one wants to make sure that one should not fall into the folly of the opposite of Kedusha. How do you assure that? You can't just continue on the middle road. That is through adopting a mode of folliness of holy. As the Gemara says, the folly helped to this sage. The story over there goes with Rabbi Huda ben Rabbi Loi, who used to stand, the famous story that is brought in the Basi, Lgani, that Rabbi Huda ben Rabbi Loi used to juggle myrtle branches in front of a kala. And when he passed on, and so there were certain chachamim that criticized his behavior, that it's unbecoming for such a great sage to behave in such a manner. But when he passed on, a pillar of fire separated between him and the rest of the world. So one of the sages expressed himself that his folly stood him by, meaning to say that this was folly of Kedusha, of holiness, and that's why he had this tremendous mark, that it was noted so tremendously by this pillar of fire that separated him from the rest of the world. So we see that there are circumstances when folliness of holy is acceptable and even required. Because the folliness of holy assists and corrects the folliness of the opposite of holy. As it says concerning the time to come, that there is a place called Nachal HaShittim, the valley of Shittim, that when Mashiach will come, a stream will come forth from the house of Hashem, from the Beis HaMikdash, and it will irrigate Nachal HaShittim. What's Nachal HaShittim? It's a place called Shittim, but it's also, in the deeper sense, it means that from the Beis HaMikdash comes out such a Kedusha that it transforms Shittim, which is Shtus Delumasa, the folliness of the opposite of Kedusha. Through this process of Iskafia Sitra Achra, bending the opposite of Kedusha. How? Because Sitra Achra, when one is involved in the opposite of Kedusha, it's Shtus. It means he's turning away from the way of Torah and mitzvahs. So through Iskafia Sitra Achra, through bending Sitra Achra, for which we need the assistance of folliness of holy, through this process, the presence of Hashem, which is the level of godliness known as Kulu Almin, meaning the level of Seviv Kul Almin, the transcendent divine energy, is drawn down into all worlds, even into our world here below. Another couple of lines, or chapter 2 base. In order to understand the general concept of folliness from the opposite of Kedusha, for which purpose we must have folliness of holiness, holy folly, through which process the glory of Hashem is drawn down in the glory of Hashem is drawn down. This level of godliness that is in all worlds equally is drawn down into our consciousness. It says in the verse in Chumash, I believe it's in Parshas Kisisa, in fact it's Nasi, sorry. This is the verses, the part of the Torah that discusses the concept of Saita. So the Torah says, if a man's wife will go astray, Pirush Rashi, what does it mean, sister? What does he define the word sister? Rashi defines, taught his wife, she turns away, midarkitznias, from modest behaviors. Uksiv, and it also says in another verse, in Pashas Balak, Vayeshev Yisrael Bashittim. Right? And that was the place, it was after Bilam tried to curse the Yidden and it didn't work, so he gave Balak advice that he should entice them to adultery. So, and he was successful. So the verse says that the Yidden were camping where? In Shittim, in a place called Shittim. The Isa b'Medrash, the Medrash there brings the Shittim, this place known as Shittim, hu mokoim hagoyrim l'shtus. It's a place that causes folly. Shalidei zeh boim lidei avera liznus, or liznes, through which one has the potential to come to commit the sin of adultery. As our sages say on the verse, and his wife will turn away, a person only commits a sin if a spirit of folly enters into him. Why? A Jew in his natural state, it's impossible for him to transgress any sin. As the Zohar writes, explains, Al Posuk Nefesh Kisechta, on the verse in the Chumash, where the Torah talks about the different sacrificial offerings that a person needs to bring if one sins. So it says Nefesh Kisechta, a soul that will sin, it should do so and so, it should bring this and this offering, and so on and so forth. So the Zohar says, on this verse, Nefesh Kisechta, the Eiraisa v'Kuchabrichu, the Torah, it's actually a question mark, the Zohar says. Nefesh Kisechta? Question mark. The Eiraisa v'Kuchabrichu Tvahan alei. Because that the Torah and Hashem are surprised upon this, upon a person. Amri, and they say, Nefesh Kisechta bitmiya, on top of Aintes. A soul that will sin, question mark, how is that possible? This means to say that even the level of nefesh, which is what? We know that in the level of the soul, in the soul there are 5 levels. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechida, right? That's in ascending order, nefesh being the lowest, yechida being the highest. So when the verse says nefesh kisechta, we're talking about the lowest level of the soul. Behind the gam b'madregas nefesh, also at the level of nefesh of the soul, meaning the lowest level. She'ein ze etzem neshama. So we're not referring to what? To the essence of the soul. And not only are we not referring to the essence of the soul, even in the 5 names of the nefesh, with which the soul of the person is called. We're referring to the very lowest one of these of these names. As the Zohar over there stresses and points out, that the whole concept of sin is only possible where? In the level of nefesh of the soul, in the lowest levels of the soul. The b'madregas neshama v'gam b'madregas ruach ein shaykh shiyachet. Meaning to say that in the levels of the soul known as neshama, and even in the level of the soul known as ruach, which is the second level up from nefesh, it's not possible there should be any sin. Nonetheless, even if at this level of nefesh where there is the possibility of sin, nevertheless, the Zohar says on this, Tvaha, question mark, how is it possible? And even more so, we're not only talking about sinning wantonly, even if it's a unwitting transgression, because the verse over there that the Zohar quotes is talking about an unwitting sin. This is also not possible naturally. It's only because of the spirit of folly that has entered into him. Because on his own, it's not possible. A Jew does not want and is not able to be separated from the Eibishter, from Hashem. Okay, we'll stop here. Continue Mitzvah tomorrow.